The morning fog hadn't lifted yet when the recruits filed into the base gymnasium for their first physical evaluation. They were young, sharp-jawed, and full of the kind of confidence that hadn't been tested yet. They moved in clusters, talking loudly, sizing each other up, performing bravery before they'd ever earned it. That's when they noticed him. He sat alone on a bench near the far wall, a man who looked to be in his late 60s, perhaps older. His frame was lean but curved slightly forward, the way bodies do when they've carried too much for too long. His gray hair was cut close, his face a weathered map of decades spent somewhere most men never go. He wore a plain white t-shirt, and on his left forearm was a tattoo so faded it looked more like a bruise than a design. A blurred anchor, a cracked eagle, a string of barely legible numbers. One of the recruits, a tall kid named Briggs, nudged his buddy and grinned. "Look at that," he said, loud enough that several others turned. "What is that even supposed to be?" "My grandpa's got better ink." The laughter came easily, the way it always does among young men who haven't yet been humbled. The old man didn't look up. He just turned his cap slowly in his hands, the way a man turns a thought he's already made peace with. The gymnasium doors swung open, and Commander Harlan Drake walked in. The room stiffened instantly. Drake was a SEAL commander, third-generation military, a man whose name appeared in classified briefings most people in that room would never be cleared to read. He had the posture of someone who had decided, long ago, never to flinch again. He scanned the room the way commanders do, not checking faces, checking character. Then his eyes landed on the old man on the bench, and something shifted. Not dramatically, just enough. Drake walked across the gymnasium floor without a word, his boots clicking against the polished surface. The recruits parted instinctively. He stopped in front of the old man, who finally looked up. And in that look was something quiet and enormous, the way oceans are enormous. Not loud about it. Commander Drake saluted him, clean, full, unhurried. The gymnasium went completely silent. The old man returned the salute slowly, and then Drake reached down and shook his hand with both of his own, holding it a moment longer than formality required. Briggs felt the laughter die somewhere in his chest. He looked at his buddy. Nobody spoke. Drake turned to face the recruits, and his voice, when it came, was low and steady. "This is Thomas Carell. In 1972, at the age of 19, he completed SEAL training when the dropout rate was over 90%. He served 3 combat tours in Vietnam, carried 4 men out of an ambush that killed 11 others, and received the Navy Cross for actions that remain partially classified." He paused. "That tattoo you were laughing at? He got it the night before his first deployment. He told me once he got it so that if he didn't come home, whoever found him would know he was proud of something." No one moved. "He didn't have to come here today," Drake continued. "He doesn't owe any of you a single thing. He came because I asked him to, because every few years I bring him in to remind me, and anyone standing in this room, what this actually costs." Thomas Carell stood then, not quickly, but with a steadiness that felt earned rather than forced. He looked at the recruits the way a man looks at a fire he once burned his hands on. Not with anger, with knowledge. "I'm not here to inspire you," he said, and his voice was rougher than they expected, cracked at the edges like old leather. "I'm here because Drake's my friend, and old men don't say no to their friends." A few quiet smiles moved through the room. "But I'll tell you one thing. Every man I carried out of that jungle, every single one of them, thought he was going to die that day. They weren't brave. They were terrified. I was terrified. We just decided that being terrified wasn't a reason to stop moving." He looked down at his forearm, at the faded tattoo, as if reading something the rest of them couldn't see. "The thing about sacrifice is that it doesn't feel noble when you're doing it. It feels like you're just the only person close enough." He sat back down. Drake dismissed him with another salute, and this time something extraordinary happened. The recruits saluted too, not because they were told to, not because protocol demanded it, but because something had cracked open in the room and filled with the feeling none of them had words for yet. Briggs stood the straightest of all of them. his jaw tight, his eyes bright in a way that had nothing to do with cockiness anymore. Later, he would ask Commander Drake for Thomas Carell's address. He wanted to write a letter. He wasn't sure what he would say. He just knew that some debts announced themselves quietly in gymnasiums on ordinary mornings, and that the least a man could do was acknowledge them. He stayed up half the night writing it. He never laughed at something he didn't understand again.